4 gymnasts, 4 different countries, 4 different years. Every single one of them died because of a warning somebody in that gym chose to ignore. The cameras were there, the coaches were there, the medical staff was there. So why does a sport that trains little girls from the age of 2 keep sending them home in body bags? She told him the move was going to break her neck. He looked her in the eye and said people like her did not break their necks. 2 weeks later, her neck snapped on the floor of a training gym in Minsk, and she never walked again. Her name was Elena Mukhina. In 1978, she was the best gymnast in the world. At the World Championships in Strasbourg, France, she beat Nadia Comaneci for the all-around title. She was 18 years old. She had 5 medals around her neck and a shot at Olympic gold in her home country. The whole Soviet Union was watching her. Her coach, a man named Mikhail Klemenko, had built his entire career around her. If she won gold in Moscow in 1980, he would be the coach of an Olympic champion. If she didn't, he was nobody. Then in 1979, Elena broke her leg in training. The bone did not heal right. The doctors took her cast off before it was ready. She told them her leg felt wrong. She told them she was walking crooked. Nobody listened. They took a new x-ray and found the bone had healed in the wrong position. They rushed her back into surgery. She spent months in recovery. The Moscow Olympics were less than a year away. She had gained weight. She could not do her old routines. She was exhausted, and she was terrified. Her coach had one answer for all of it: more training, harder training, and one very specific skill, a move called the Thomas Salto. It was a 1 3/4 backflip with 1.5 twists, landing forward into a roll. It was named after an American male gymnast. It had been invented for men. No woman in the world was doing it safely. Klemenko wanted Elena to be the first. It would give her the highest start value of any floor routine at the Olympics. He thought it would guarantee her the gold. Elena begged him to take it out. She said, more than once in front of other gymnasts, that she was going to break her neck on it. She said it so often that her teammates remembered it for the rest of their lives. Klemenko told her to stop being dramatic. He told her that people like her, elite athletes, world champions, the chosen ones, did not break their necks. That was something that happened to weaker gymnasts, not to her. She kept training it. One of her teammates, Nelly Kim, who was also on the 1980 Soviet Olympic team, said later that watching Elena train that skill made her so afraid that she decided to quit gymnastics herself as soon as the Olympics were over. Kim said, "I could see what was coming. Everyone in that gym could see it. We just didn't say it out loud." On July 3rd, 1980, 2 weeks before the opening ceremony of the Moscow Olympics, Elena was training at the Palace of Sport in Minsk. Klemenko was not there. He had flown back to Moscow the day before to tell the Soviet selection committee that Elena was ready for the team. He was trying to lock in his spot as the coach of a future Olympic champion. He left his gymnast, the one he had been warned was not safe on that skill, alone with the national team coaches. One of those coaches, whose name the Soviet Federation never released, told Elena she needed to run a full difficulty floor routine that day. Elena said she was tired. She said her leg hurt. She said she was scared of the skill. The coach told her she was being soft. He told her she needed to prove she deserved her spot. She chalked her hands. She walked to the corner of the floor. She started her run. She hit the first tumbling pass. She prepared for the Thomas Salto. She launched. She under-rotated. Her body came down, not on her feet, not on her back, but on the point of her chin. The full weight of her body slammed down through her jaw into her neck. 3 vertebrae in her spine snapped. The sound was so loud that every gymnast in the gym stopped moving. Elena lay on the floor. Her eyes were open. She could not feel her arms. She could not feel her legs. She could not feel anything below her shoulders. Later, in one of the only interviews she ever gave, she said her very first thought as she lay there was, "Thank God I won't be going to the Olympics." She was 20 years old. She would never stand up again. The Soviet Federation spent the next 14 months lying about what had happened. They told the newspapers she fell off the uneven bars. They told the newspapers she was trying to invent a new skill on her own. They told the newspapers her coach had nothing to do with it. Klemenko was quietly moved to another team. He later moved to Italy and kept coaching gymnastics for the rest of his life. He never once publicly admitted that he had pushed her to keep that skill in her routine. She never once publicly forgave him. Years later, a Soviet coaching investigation would find that on the day of Elena's injury, there were at least 6 separate coaching errors in play. The platform was wrong. The spotting was wrong. The decision to run a full routine was wrong. Klemenko's absence was wrong. The refusal to let her train the skill into the foam pit was wrong. The culture that made her afraid to say no was wrong. Every one of them was preventable. Elena Mukhina lived in a wheelchair for the next 26 years. She died in 2006 at the age of 46 from complications of her paralysis. The Thomas Salto was banned from women's gymnastics. It was later banned from men's gymnastics too. One line from her coach: 2 weeks of ignored warnings. A full human life ended at 20. Before this story gets even darker, hit subscribe, because the next gymnast you're going to hear about was 15 years old, and the piece of equipment that killed her was a single bolt that nobody checked. She had already slipped on the springboard once that morning. She told her coach. He sent her back up to vault anyway. By that afternoon, she was in a coma she would never wake up from. Her name was Julissa Gomez. She was 15 years old. She was born in Brownsville, Texas, the daughter of Mexican-American parents who worked regular jobs and saved every dollar they had to send her to elite gymnastics training. Julissa was not the flashiest gymnast in the country. She was not the most naturally talented. What she was the hardest worker in every gym she ever stepped in. Her coaches said she never complained. She never quit a workout. She never said no. At 15, she had made the 1988 USA Gymnastics national team. She was training under a coach named Al Fong in Blue Springs, Missouri. Fong ran a famous program. He had built his name on a vault called the Yurchenko, a round off onto the springboard, a back handspring onto the vault table, then a layout somersault off. In 1988, the Yurchenko was still new. It was considered the future of the sport. It was also considered the most dangerous vault a gymnast could do because of one specific problem. If a gymnast's foot slipped even slightly during the round off, the part where you turn your body backwards as you hit the springboard, your body was already committed. You couldn't stop. You couldn't change direction. You were going head first at full speed toward a solid piece of equipment. The only thing standing between you and the vault horse was a piece of foam on top of the table. If you hit it head first, your neck took the entire force of the fall. To prevent the slip, there is a very simple piece of equipment. It is a safety collar. It is a metal bracket that bolts the springboard to the vault runway so the board cannot shift or move. It takes about 40 seconds to check. It is the most basic piece of safety equipment in the sport. At a competition called the World Sports Fair in Tokyo, Japan, on May 4th, 1988, the safety collar on Julissa's springboard was not in place. Julissa felt it during warm-ups. She had slipped during a practice run. She told her coach. One of her teammates later told investigators, "She came off the runway and said her foot slid. She said the board felt weird. Al looked at her and told her to go again. She went again. She hit the runway at full speed. She hit the springboard for her round off. Her foot slipped. Her body was already rotating. She could not stop. She hit the vault table head first at a speed of roughly 15 miles an hour. Her neck bent forward at an angle it was never designed to bend. Her spinal cord was crushed between the third and fourth vertebrae. She went completely limp in midair. The arena was dead silent. One of the other coaches ran to her. A gymnast from another team said later, "We were warming up on beam. We heard the sound. You don't forget a sound like that. It was this wet, heavy crack and then just nothing." Julissa was alive. Barely. She could not breathe on her own. She was rushed out of the arena and loaded into an ambulance. And this is where the second failure happened. Because somewhere between the arena and the hospital, during the emergency medical transport, her ventilator tube was not connected properly. Julissa's brain was cut off from oxygen for a critical window of time. By the time she arrived at the Tokyo hospital, she was in a coma. She never came out of it. Her family flew to Tokyo. They found their 15-year-old daughter in an intensive care unit, unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to speak. They spent weeks trying to stabilize her and eat enough to fly home to Houston. When they finally did, they set up a hospital room in their house. They took care of her around the clock for the next 3 years. She never woke up. She never looked at them again. On August 8, 1991, Julissa Gomez died of complications from her injuries. She was 18 years old. She had spent a quarter of her life in a coma. The investigation into what happened on that vault runway was quiet. The International Gymnastics Federation, known as FIG, later made a new rule. The safety collar on every springboard must be physically checked and verified by a judge before every single vault at every sanctioned competition in the world. That rule exists today because of Julissa Gomez. It did not exist before her. A single bolt, 40 seconds of checking, and a 15-year-old girl is still alive. Her coach, Al Fong, was never suspended. USA Gymnastics never revoked his coaching license. He kept training elite gymnasts. 6 years later, another one of his athletes, a girl named Christy Henrich, would also be dead. 2 dead elite gymnasts. 1 coach, 10 years. Nobody in the sport stopped him. Nobody in the sport even tried. Julissa Gomez's story does not end with her death. It ends every time another elite coach chooses to save 40 seconds. It ends every time a 15-year-old is told that the board feels fine, go again, don't make a fuss. It ends every time the equipment is the cheap thing to check and the girl is the thing that takes the impact. She slipped, she said so, they sent her back up. That is the entire story. That is the entire sport. A judge pulled her aside at a meet in Budapest and told her she was too fat to represent the United States. She was 15 years old. She weighed 93 pounds. Her name was Christy Henrich. She was from Independence, Missouri. She trained at the same gym, under the same coach as Julissa Gomez. By the late 1980s, Christy was one of the most talented young gymnasts in America. She was small, even for a gymnast, about 4'11". She was powerful. She could tumble. She had elite form on bars. At the 1988 Olympic trials, she missed making the team by 0.118 of a point. That is less than 1/10 of a point. That is a margin so small, it comes down to which judge blinked. After the trials, at an international meet in Budapest, Hungary, a United States judge took Christy aside at the hotel. According to multiple later accounts from Christy's family and teammates, the judge told her, in plain words, that she was too fat, that if she wanted to make the 1992 Olympic team, she needed to lose weight, that she would never wear the red, white, and blue leotard again unless she dropped pounds. Christy was 93 pounds. She went home to Missouri. She stopped eating. At first, it was just skipping meals. Then it was eating once a day. Then it was eating almost nothing at all. Her coach, Al Fong, kept training her. He was not the one who told her to stop eating, but he was the one running the gym where every girl was weighed. He was the one whose programme de pomme depended on girls being small. He did not pull her out. He did not call her parents. He did not send her to a doctor. By 1989, Christy had full-blown anorexia. She was also bulimic. She was running 5 miles a day on top of full gymnastics practices. Her teammates watched her throw up after every meal. They watched her weigh herself 4, 5, 6 times a day. They watched her body disappear. Her teammate, Kim Zmeskal, who would go on to win the world all-around title in 1991, said in a later interview that every single gymnast in their training group had disordered eating. Every single one. It wasn't a secret, Zmeskal said. It was the job. It was what you had to do. Nobody thought it was a disease. We thought it was what winning looked like. Christy kept training through it. Her wrists grew so weak she could not grip the uneven bars. Her muscles started eating themselves for fuel. Her hair started falling out. She collapsed in practice. She was hospitalized. She was released. She was hospitalized again. She was released again. The sport had no system for pulling her out. There was no independent medical officer in USA Gymnastics who had the authority to stop her from training. There was no federation doctor who could override her coach. There was nobody to call. Her parents finally pulled her out of the gym in 1991 when she could no longer stand up on her own. But the damage was already done. Her body had been starving for too long. Her heart was damaged. Her organs were damaged. Her bones were damaged. Over the next 3 years, Christy fought to stay alive. She went in and out of eating disorder treatment centers. She talked publicly about what had happened to her. She warned other young gymnasts. She told reporters that the sport had broken her and she was trying to use her last years to stop it from breaking anyone else. On July 26, 1994, Christy Henrich died of multiple organ failure in a Kansas City hospital. She was 22 years old. At the time of her death, she weighed 47 pounds. 47 pounds, less than a kindergartner. That is what the sport did to her body. The coroner ruled her death an eating disorder fatality. The sport called it a tragedy. A few people in USA Gymnastics gave sad quotes to the newspapers. Nobody was fired. Nobody was suspended. Nobody was investigated. The judge who told her she was too fat in Budapest was never named. The coach who ran her gym while she starved was never disciplined. The federation that had the power to stop it never admitted it had the power. Christy's story, by itself, would be enough to shake any sport. But here's the part nobody talked about at the time. In 2018, nearly a quarter of a century after Christy died, the United States Department of Education completed a formal investigation into USA Gymnastics. The investigation found that for more than 30 years, the Federation had ignored, buried, or actively suppressed athlete welfare complaints. It found that team doctor Larry Nassar had been sexually abusing minor gymnasts for decades while the Federation protected him. It found a culture of abuse, starvation, and silence that went all the way to the top. Christy's name was in those records. Julissa's name was in those records. Elena Mukhina was not American, but every single country's gymnastics federation had a file that looked just like hers. The system knew. The system had always known. Every death was documented. Every warning was ignored. One of Christy's friends said at her funeral, "She didn't die because she was weak. She died because she was strong enough to keep trying to be what the sport told her to be. The sport is what killed her, not her body." The sport did not change after she died. The sport did not change after Larry Nassar was arrested. The sport has still not changed. The little girls in the leotards keep getting smaller. The skills keep getting harder. The bodies keep breaking. Christy Henrich weighed 47 pounds when she died. The sport weighed her, found her wanting, and moved on to the next girl. She slipped off the high bar on a Friday night. She was dead by Sunday afternoon. She was 20 years old. She was a nursing major on the dean's list. She was, by every account, one of the kindest people anyone in her gym had ever met. And none of that mattered, because when she fell, there was no trauma doctor in the building. Her name was Melanie Coleman. She was a junior at Southern Connecticut State University. On November 8, 2019, she was training at her home gym in Hamden, Connecticut, a private club called New Era Gymnastics, where she had trained since she was 10. She was running a routine release skill on the uneven bars, a skill she had done, by her coach's estimate, 10,000 times. Her hand slipped. She fell roughly 8 feet. She landed on the back of her head and neck. The Connecticut Chief Medical Examiner later ruled her death as complications of blunt injuries of the head and neck. There was no trauma physician on site. There was no ambulance staged at the gym. The NCAA, which governs college gymnastics in the United States, has never required one. Melanie was rushed to Yale New Haven Hospital by paramedics who arrived well after the fall. She was put into emergency surgery. She survived the night. She survived Saturday. On Sunday, November 10th, 2019, she died. Her head coach called it a complete accident. The gym called it unexpected. The sport called it rare. It is not rare. The uneven bars sit about 8 feet above the landing mat. The standard mat is about 20 centimeters thick. A gymnast who falls wrong from that height onto that mat can die. That is not an unlucky outcome. That is the math of the apparatus. The sport has known this since Julissa Gomez. 4 gymnasts, 4 decades. Elena Mukhina's coach told her people like her didn't break their necks. Julissa Gomez's springboard wasn't bolted down. Christy Henrich was told she was too fat at 93 pounds. Melanie Coleman fell out of practice. Her federation didn't require a doctor to attend. If you coach a gymnast, remember these 4 names. They trusted the system. The system failed them. No medal is worth this. No scholarship, no sponsorship, no Olympic dream. Pull your athlete. Check the bolt. Feed the girl. Put a doctor in the building. The cameras caught every one of them. The system caught none of them. That is what caught on tape really means.